do we know about travel corridor arrangement? For the last 2 decades, a complex network of supply chain, capital, and people-to-people engagement has been established in Asia. This was in parallel followed by initiatives, especially in infrastructure and investment, that aim to complement and boost regional integration. But this positive momentum has been put into a temporary halt due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which takes away, or at least make difficult, an essential element of growth, mobility, and interaction. Gradual ease of restrictions for travels, including through the establishment of travel corridors, will likely be key for post-pandemic recovery. Travel corridor, or travel bubble, is a post-disaster recovery strategy involving the establishment of a limited international cross-boundary travel arrangement aimed at reopening the border between 2 or more countries.
Presiden menyambut baik deklarasi mengenai Travel Corridor Arrangement Framework dan mendorong agar rencana implementasi harus segera diwujudkan.
The arrangement may take the form of a secure travel route, infrastructural preparedness for strict travel, and other components of safety in relation to the disaster or the risk, including in this case, a health protocol. The usual precondition for a post-disaster recovery strategy, such as this, is a relative success of the country or parties involved to mitigate the disaster and its risks. As countries begin to adapt to the restrictions required for cross-boundary travels, talks of the so-called travel corridors emerged, especially to allow certain essential travels and accommodate the positive outlook that some form of travel will return sooner or later. The discourse was further boosted as the prospect and later distribution of vaccination projects began to unravel. At present, we can find some international travel arrangements initiatives emerging. Yet, the uncertainty of the pandemic's development, including in anticipation of new viral variants of the COVID-19, is still a significant factor that may change the prospect of these initiatives.
The real issue is not per se about how people can travel from one point to another point, but it's more the issue of how we can ensure that people can travel safely and across the globe. And when they travel, they will not be put into a situation that first that they can be endangered due to the virus, or they themselves can endanger others. So the travel bubble or other type of means mainly is to ensure that the travelers the travel is conducted in a safe and healthy manner.
The basic consideration of a travel corridor is a common view on risk measurement. While COVID-19 assessments may vary from country to another, they usually tend to revolve around indicators like the projection of infection rates, infection to population rate, and fatality rate. in addition to assessment of overall effectiveness of the partner countries' public health response to pandemic. Key to the agreement would be similarity on the phase or stage of pandemic management and numbers. Negotiations with partner countries usually involve discussion over the profiles of the users of the corridor, the limit of mobility and other protocol-related measures upon arrival in place, and the general readiness of the countries in implementing the SIMs. The different standards in travel preconditions and technical protocols could be an issue in reaching agreements. On implementation, depending on the agreement, countries may also adopt unequal preconditions depending on their travel corridor arrangement partners.
I think the main challenges is to implement all the health protocol, be that from the Indonesian side or with our counterpart, either in ASEAN countries or in other Asian countries. I think that the main challenge is to ensure that there is a smooth process between one point and another point, and second is that the health protocols of each country, they are standardized, and I think we use the WHO standard. And second is, and third is that how we can, if there is a transmission, how we can address it quickly, in a quick manner.
Southeast Asia desperately needs a travel corridor to recover. A number of countries in Southeast Asia, for instance, are significantly dependent on its tourism sector. Thus, a travel corridor arrangement considered vital for economic recovery. Policy discussions such as the use of vaccine passports or difference in COVID policy approach have further undermined countries who have struggled to fulfill their own vaccine distribution targets. As such, the success of the arrangement will likely depend on ASEAN's success in a more equal vaccine distribution for Southeast Asia. On the 36th ASEAN Summit held in June 2020, Indonesia's President Joko Widodo expressed his proposal of an ASEAN travel corridor arrangement to facilitate essential business travel while prioritizing public health safety. On the 37th ASEAN Summit held in November 2020, ASEAN adopted a declaration of an ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement Framework as part of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Indonesia was appointed as the coordinator for the task force working on ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement. Since then, the progress and realization of the ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement has stagnated. In October 2021, Indonesia's Minister of Foreign Affairs stated that the initiative is now in the process of establishing a common approach on verifying ASEAN countries' vaccine certification with the aim for mutual recognition and prevention of discrimination on vaccines.
I think it depends on two elements like we are talking here. The first one is about the public health situation. As we know that the Omicron variant has been spreading across the world and also definitely across the region as well. And I think when we talk about the travel arrangement, we need to be careful, in opening our borders because of this public health situation. And the other one is actually about the ASEAN cohesion among ASEAN member states. We know that ASEAN countries have been negotiating the travel lane between one another. However, I think the backbone of the regional economic recovery itself, which is tourism, hasn't been discussed pretty much. They are mostly concentrating their discussion on diplomatic officials, businessmen, and also medical and also humanitarian travel.
But while hopes that it can revive regional economic interaction and travels between ASEAN citizens remain, difficulties, including in the difference of pandemic situation, use of indicators and standards, capacity for protocols, vaccination rates, and infrastructure readiness, including in the use of digital platforms to support travels, may continue to restrict progress. Indonesia has considered the idea of a travel bubble or corridor since at least May 2020. At the time, the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment publicly expressed their plan in working alongside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to deliberate, consider, and explore Indonesia's preparation for travel corridors.
Our hope is not per se the travel corridor arrangement that can be implemented. Our hope is that we can maintain the positive trend that we have so far for the past 6 months in containing the spread of COVID-19, including how we can now the challenge is also how we can prevent the spread of Omicron variant to Indonesia. Yes, there is an increase, but slight increase. Now the main challenge is how we can contain it, and second is how we can ensure that the health protocol and economic activities can go hand in hand. And so far we see that our approach has been working. Last year, our economy is growing by over 3%. Hopefully this year it will be over 5%.
In June 2020, the government expressed their plan for a travel bubble scheme with partners like China, Republic of Korea, Japan, and Australia. These plans have since faced barriers in implementation, especially due to the arrival of the second and third wave of infection in Indonesia and these countries at the start of 2021 to around June and July. Indonesia has had also talks of travel bubble arrangement with Singapore and Malaysia.
Guna mendukung upaya pemulihan ekonomi, tadi kita juga sudah sepakat untuk dibuat travel corridor arrangement yang secara bertahap nanti akan kita membukanya satu persatu.
Hari ini saya dan Bapak Presiden telah mencapai persetujuan supaya Malaysia dan Indonesia dapat melaksanakan satu koridor perjalanan.
In 2022, Indonesia, as the current president of the Group of 20, or G20, has started talks with the group's members to establish standardized health protocols for international travel, as countries around the world gradually lift their border restrictions. The issue was discussed in the G20 Health Working Group meeting, where Indonesia emphasized the need for countries to have common protocols for cross-border travel, adding that disconnected health protocols between countries have increased costs, added complexity, and cost inconvenience. Indonesia's goal is to boost confidence in the country, attract investment, including on infrastructure projects, and to resume closeness in economic relations, particularly with countries that has helped Indonesia overcome some of its most difficult moments with the pandemic through aid and cooperation. These countries have already become stakeholders to Indonesia's development and reopening. Ultimately, the key to recovery is resumption of supply chains and connectivity. Indonesia's plans for travel corridors are based on the necessity to reinvigorate its economic engagement with its most important investors, with the goal of resumption of foreign direct investment and return of numbers. Therefore, the profile of the priority users for Indonesia are businesses. The second layer of consideration would likely be towards the impact the corridor could have on its tourism sector.
I think we need to have or we need to see like this post-pandemic travel with the perspective of build back better. Not only we need to establish a safer travel corridor between ASEAN member states, and also definitely a more inclusive one, because what we have been negotiating over the past few months basically limited to certain they call it as essential travels like diplomatic officials, businessmen, and so on and so forth. But the most important thing is actually resuming the mobility, but a safer one, mobility between ASEAN people itself, like tourism.
Later, labor movements may also be considered as part of the arrangement. These considerations will likely lead to prioritization in corridor arrangements.